All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, the London is Blue podcast emergency edition of the chaos that is the transfer window winding down. We're recording this on Sunday afternoon, U.S. time. Dan here, one of your hosts. Brandon, enjoying a nice weekend off here, but Nick is back from a golf weekend where he trounced the opposition. He's come back with minimal back pain. And really just no hangover whatsoever to talk about what's going on in Chelsea.
None of that is correct. And I will say to wake up this morning and I always do kind of the one eye squint at my phone to see what's happened this month on see Ollie with the eyeball emojis. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Now we're getting stuck in. Now we're back.
Oh, that is right. We do have good friend Ollie Glanville back on the pod with us too, because Ollie, we just need to almost have a little bit of talk therapy, kind of sharing the excitement together about what might transpire over the next 24 to 48 hours. And it's good to do that with friends, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm here to just get us through this kind of tumultuous next kind of 72 hours. Should be a quiet one.
Well, look, there's no more jet tracking on Twitter, so we don't know if Eghbali is in fact in Lisbon yet, but we're hoping that that's the case because we're going to be talking about a few things here. The midfield mania that is wrapping up the window for Chelsea as major news was announced about Enzo Fernandez heading into the weekend here, both from Portuguese and Argentinian sources and English media sources as well. We also want to talk a little bit more about Malo Gusto and Chelsea's new approach to talent ID and maybe new approaches to how we film the arrival of players with professional camera crews in jets. And then we also want to look ahead to the fact that Chelsea are, in fact, returning to footballing action. The men's team, the women's team obviously have been taking care of business in quite fine fashion, as well as some of the academy teams too. But returning against Fulham, and maybe who will be healthy for Graham Potter to select and start to rebalance the side in terms of those who are coming back in. We want to say a couple quick gratitudes, though, on Patreon to Edward and Ryan on Apple Podcasts. We want to thank Chelsea Fan 91 and Jacoby Smith 24 from the US. And then, hey, we've cracked the code. We're now at 1,700 plus reviews on Spotify, 4.9 stars. The push to 2,000 is on. Look, we've got 35-ish plus days until we're back in London, Nick, hanging out with friends like Ollie Glanville. Let's get to 2,000 by then. That would be great.
That's a big goal. It's a lofty goal, and I like where you're going with that. If you are listening to this and you're like, hey, man, I'm really interested in potentially seeing Enzo Fernandez play football in person, you have one day to sign up for our trip. Okay? There it is. Links are everywhere. DM us, email us. We'll get you connected. We've had 5 more signups this week. I think the vibes are returning. The positive vibes are returning. So just a last alert there for you. We're going to be doing live shows. We're going to be seeing Chelsea play in the Champions League against Dortmund. Leeds at home. It's going to be a blast. Get stuck in.
Well, yes, nature is healing at SW6, and Chelsea are returning to being the heel, the wrestling heel for every other side in global football right now. So that's why I'm calling it midfield mania. And look, what is happening? Because as Nick alluded to earlier, we woke up from Cesar Merlo's tweet indicating that there's more going on with Enzo Fernandez and what is happening right now. Chelsea potentially willing to go up to the 120 million euro mark. Now, how that actually happens and how that is structured, that is the thing that has to be potentially decided at this point. But we see that Ollie first, and then we see hours later, Matt Law, Ben Jacobs, several others, Fabrizio tweeting as well that Chelsea are in fact in conversation, that something might be able to be done. Rui Costa potentially being a stern negotiator, but then Eghbali coming in from the top rope, trying to get the deal done. How are you feeling about all of this as a potential? And I mean, maybe just reacting to the thoughts of it.
I mean, been saying for a while that it's almost too quiet on the midfield front. We heard briefly that Caicedo, we looked at kind of verbal offer of 55 million, which, we know Brighton, they're not going to accept that. That's a ludicrous offer. It's half of what they want, right? So, yeah, for me, we never closed that door on Enzo. And we were always going to come back in strong. And this kind of real time element to this as well, with 4 or 5 days left of the window. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And you're talking about a guy who will come on to as like a transformative player. Like he would fundamentally change the way we played if we could get this over the line. So yeah, it's a really big statement.
Yeah, Dan, I like that you titled this Midfield Mania because as a child, I watched some WWF wrestling. Stone Cold Steve Austin, of course, being my favorite wrestler. And I would just remember, it'd be a normal match, everything would be happening. It'd be the end of Monday Night Raw. And then you'd hear the glass shattering music. And then he'd come out and Stone Cold Stunner everybody in the ring. The referees, announcers, didn't matter. That was just how it ended. If we pull this off, that is the equivalent to a Stone Cold Stunner to the rest of the league, particularly to those who were hoping to maybe wait to the summer to bid for this player. And I mean, again, it's on a more serious front, now that I've got my Stone Cold analogy out there, this is a part of the reason why you have smart negotiators within your team. You don't burn bridges. You don't get too upset. You don't get too emotional because, as time passes, circumstances change, right? And they might be looking at their books. They might be looking at their cash value. I talked about this with Adam last week. If Enzo gets hurt on February 1st and it's a long-term injury, his value's probably halved, right? So they're playing a really dangerous game with this guy that they bought for 10 some odd million last year to make 1,000% profit on him in less than 7 months. I mean, this is a pretty big deal, and I think it's a smart thing for Chelsea just to go in and see where the right line is.
Well, we know that when Stanley is doing the "you can't see me," and we've got the Todd father himself asking if you can smell what he's cooking. As we're recording this, we are in fact kind of just pulling in the live tweets. So we have one from Matt Law saying Chelsea officials could in fact travel to Portugal to get the deal done, just as Bali when Stanley flew to Turkey to get the Mudryk deal over the line. And I think, Nick, you have been colder on this potential transfer than some others. And I pulled in the graph here that Expected Chelsea put out as the "what finally won Nick over" section. And this is seemingly the thing that has warmed you up to this idea of Enzo at potentially the price level. Because I think that's always been the issue for you, is that the price feels exorbitantly high for, again, that 1 year of growth for the player.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just frame up the reason why I was maybe a little less psyched than Dan has been wearing his Enzo Fernandez pajamas to bed every night.
Why
not? Look, I think you can make an argument over the summer that Chelsea were a mark, right? We were a mark for maybe players who had peaked or were nearing their peak and who have not performed well for us in the first half of this year. A bunch of circumstances to be damned as well. We've just had some shit luck this year, alongside some potentially maybe some panic buys that haven't worked out. This is not a panic buy, but I would say he's only been at Benfica for 7 months. They bought him for 10 some odd million. He had a phenomenal World Cup. Everyone knows how fucking talented he is. I mean, come on, like, it's not a question of talent. But I think my bigger thing is, like, one, is he worth 1,000% inflation in 7 months? Two, is this the player that is going to help Chelsea get to a point this summer where we're playing, kind of closer to 6th, 5th, 4th instead of 9th or 10th, right? I don't know the answer to that question. TBD. We don't even know if this is going to happen or not. But my sense all along, Ollie, and I'm happy for you to refute my statement, has been that someone in the destroyer profile might be more useful to us this season as we stand than maybe someone who's a little bit more creative. I know there are a bunch of people who will disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine. We can all have our own arguments on that. But I was always kind of more on the destroyer side. I mean, if we sign him, I'm going to be out of the mood. Dan will have to ship me an extra pair of the pajamas to wear to bed. Okay.
Done.
So this is not about him as the player. It's more about our circumstances and where we are right now as a team and what we need, because our midfield has been so decimated, and we know that N'Golo Kante is not replaceable.
Absolutely. We all know our lack of recruitment in the kind of demolisher DM profile since, well, around 2019, when you're thinking back to when N'Golo got his first big injury. But what's emerged this window is that there aren't that many of those profile really available right now, or not that clubs want to let go, right? You know, West Ham are not going to let Declan Rice go this window. Brighton are fighting really hard on Caicedo right now. And of those two, you know, Rice obviously has the big history with us. And in terms of the fee, it's kind of around a similar amount for those two. And I would argue that Rice is a more complete player. So it doesn't seem like we're going to go back in for Caicedo after the initial offer. So perhaps it indicates that we've got, you know, we're going to not settle for our second choice or third choice targets, and we're going to go for the first choice in the summer. You know, there's a reason why Zakaria came as an extra body in that demolisher role. So yeah, I'd say kind of wait and see on that. But as you say, like Enzo Fernandez, he's just such a rare profile. He's got so many like elite qualities. Like we're showing the graph that Expected Chelsea displayed on Twitter. You know, it's out of 100, and on 3 of the values, his value is 100. So this is the type of guy you're talking about.
I mean, and the ones that are in the highest like percentages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Goal creating actions, shot creating actions, shots, non-expected or non-pen or expected non-pen goal contributions.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that's just a little bit lower down, which I think most people are excited about, is key passes, right? This is something from a profile that you've been talking about for a long time, that perhaps our creativity problem exists further back, not further forward, right? You pick up Mudryk, you pick up Madueke, you know, you have Sterling, you have Pulisic, you have all these other players up front. We just can't get them the ball in dangerous positions. Maybe that's the reason why he's the guy in this scenario.
That's the thing that I continue to underline as the why Fernandez. Why would you go bigger on this player, in the fact that when you look at these stats, and so there are stats on the percentile ranking kind of compared within other midfielders. And so that's the number out of 100 is, you know, if you're saying 89 or 90, it's the 90th percentile of midfielders in those stats and areas. And the number of those that are in that 85, 90, 90 plus, 100 even, is why you should be excited. I think it does allow a lot of our team to be the beneficiary. I mean, he doesn't make just one player better, he makes the entire attack better. And if you've looked at a couple of the performances from Benfica and just what he can do when he's on his day, that is something to be very excited for, both in what he's done in the Champions League, so in European competitions, and what he's done in the domestic league too. So you're getting someone who's been able to do it both. I do think, as with anything else, it is a massive monetary commitment. But I think the other benefit is doing it now versus doing it in the summer. We know that the rules are going to change, and that UEFA has decided that Chelsea is the reason. We're not going to allow any crazy accounting changes again. We're going to go back to 5-ish year deals to do the amortization over. So if you can get this opportunity and say, yes, we're overpaying right now, but we can divide that cost over 7.5 years, 8.5 years. Hell, let's just sign him to a 10-year deal. Who says no to that? You're really finding the value in the player over the longer period. And that actually is going to give you more flexibility in the summer and beyond as you look to refill this side. Because I think to the point here, Ollie, you don't know what's going to happen with Jorginho. You don't know what's going to happen with Conte. You have Kovacic, who will be on 2 years. And so the question then is, do you think he's going to renew?
He's hurt half the year every year. Now.
You're in restock mode. And if you're in restock mode and you haven't invested in the midfield for multiple years, just look at this as paying for your past sins in failure to recruit at 20 to 30 million a season for the past 5 years. And then you're good. It's good, reflective way of taking care of things.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we've heard a lot of commentary on the fact that there isn't a plan in terms of our spending, but what you're seeing is almost every single player that we've picked up is on track to be, if not the next big thing, then one of the next big things, or to be talked about in that category, right? Obviously, Enzo winning the best young player at the World Cup kind of fast tracks that, right? But when he went to Benfica from River Plate, people were watching him. Like lots of big clubs are watching him at River, and Benfica took the chance because they are the sort of club that develops that player in order to sell on. Like, let's not beat around the bush. That is their business model. But in terms of Enzo, if it doesn't get done this window, and in the summer it comes back up, he won't be offered for the same money because they won't be able to get that. But there will be a lot of suitors. Real are looking at us right now going, we want Bellingham, but if we don't get him, Enzo's next off the conveyor, right? Liverpool are desperately looking at that, saying if we can't get Bellingham, Enzo's right there. Bayern, and you can name any top club, United, City, they're all looking at this guy, and it's for a reason. He is an elite talent, and as I keep saying, he would be transformative to the way we play. He is a plug and play sort of player in any kind of system because he just has that kind of aura around him and that kind of generalist ability to do so many rare things in one single player. So it is such a huge coup if we can get this over the line. And that's why we're willing to go almost above and beyond, right? We're talking about a Premier League record transfer. We're talking about Benfica's record sale, our record transfer as a club. Like, this is like a big boy signing, right?
Yeah.
This is a statement signing that the next decade is going to be our decade.
Sounds like a good way to put that. Just so, yeah, we'll put the chart out, and actually we'll retweet Expected Chelsea because they did all the work. But ball progression machine sounds good. Top level final ball, boy, have we missed that. Great passing range, sure. Confident shooter. Did you see his goal at the World Cup? Good tackling prowess. Good, not great. Let's be honest about that. This is not a CDM in the traditional sense, right? This is a really good double pivot number 6 or even a progressive number 8. And he's equally comfortable in both roles. He can play deeper as more of a playmaker from deep. But if you think about the way that like Conte and Jorginho or Conte and Kovacic have played, he's definitely more of the Kovacic Jorginho role than he is the Conte role, right? So we just have to be really cognizant of that. We're still going to need someone or someones on the other side to complement what he can do, because he's not a high-level dribbler like Kovacic is, and he's more of a reactive defender because his brain wants to go forward, right? And I think that's really, Dan, to me, like with good comes bad, right? We have to be balanced in our understanding of who this player is. He does a lot more of what we need than what we don't need, right? I mean, it's an overall win, but I just want to kind of call that out.
Yeah, you're at the point now, and so we'll kind of end on Fernandez, but continue on this midfield conversation. You're at the point now where you either get the deal done now, and you don't necessarily want to do the release clause because there's a tax on the release clause if you pay it in full. That makes it ridiculously more expensive. So it's actually cheaper to pay above the release clause and do it in an installment faction and breaking it up over time, which is super interesting. Accounting is fun. Or you potentially get the deal done for summer and get ahead of the queue then is like the option B. It's not the ideal situation because Enzo comes in, Chelsea wins the Champions League again, we get 3 stars, and it's a really, really positive place to be. I live there in my mind space, and I would like everybody in the real world to join me there. The third option is you don't do the deal and you have to look at your alternative options. And that really isn't what we've seen this window from Chelsea, a side that are now saying, this is the person that we've identified. We're going to go out and get them. And even if we have to do something different, like the Malo Gusto deal, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we are willing to wait until summer if it has to be to make that happen. And so like that is something that could potentially happen. Just to kind of close the book on the Caicedo story. So we saw Chelsea bid, we saw Arsenal bid, we saw Caicedo break up on Instagram and Twitter with Brighton, hey fam, love you, but sorry, I gotta go. And then it became really awkward for all parties as this continued to move forward with Brighton's manager today in the press conference after they beat Liverpool, which was really wonderful. Talk about, hey, look, we want them to stay, but we are willing to move forward without them. And so like it's a really interesting place to be. I think at this point, Nick, it feels like Caicedo was likely an option B anyway for Chelsea. And at that price, I think that's also maybe what has moved the needle on the Fernandez deal. The knock on effect of the increase in price from Brighton has driven Chelsea to say, why are we going to pay, a similar amount or within the range of that amount for a player who's really our second choice?
Yeah, they're not the same player. First
Correct.
of all, right? A very different profile of player. Caicedo is a really talented young cat as well. They played really well, the Ecuadorian team in the World Cup as well. But it's the buying Caicedo instead of Fernandez at that close of a price point is like buying a souped up Volkswagen instead of a Mercedes. Like, why would you do that? But just buy the fucking Mercedes. If you're going to spend 70 grand on a car, do you want a tricked out Volkswagen or do you want the Mercedes Benz logo on your car? You want the Mercedes Benz logo, right? Like that price, I think, has drawn Chelsea back and gone, maybe this isn't such a bad deal. Like, this Enzo deal, because he's definitely, he fits a core need. I still don't know what Caicedo would do for us. Like, I think that's a bigger question than anything else that we're talking about from a price perspective. Is he a Conte replacement? I don't know. Like, he plays this weird kind of hybrid role for Brighton, and he's really good at it. And they're getting, I think, the best out of him right now. But I don't know if he'd do the same here. So I don't know, Ollie, what your thoughts are, but that's kind of how I look at that.
Yeah, I think Caicedo is a really talented player, and he is in that hybrid kind of destroyer / sort of progressive carries sort of player, right? So I suppose if we were sort of ballparking it, then he would be more of a Kante style replacement. But Caicedo is never going to be as dominant a player as N'Golo Kante has been for Chelsea, right? It's, to use your car analogy, if you buy the Mercedes, the add-ons come as standard, right? Like, you're talking about a luxury player in Enzo. He brings everything in terms of that completeness, and all the add-ons come as standard. Whereas with Caicedo, he's going to require more coaching, right? He's still a raw player. And De Zerbi and Potter have brought a brilliant amount out of him. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what his ceiling is. If he does go to Arsenal, for instance, I do think he would make them better just by the nature of that kind of signing and the impact he would have on quite a slow midfield. He would bring that dynamism. But in terms of the way we're looking in terms of long term, like, almost every single one of our targets in January has been 21 or under, right? I just wonder why we would want to compromise on these situations. And that's why you look at an Enzo over a Moises Caicedo, especially at the prices that Brighton are asking, and they are not going to back down on these prices. Brighton stick to these prices, right? There's a reason why their model works so well. They buy in at 6 million, they sell at 60. They buy in at 4 for Kaoru Mitoma, and as we're recording this, Mitoma has just destroyed Liverpool again. When Real come in for him, or Man City or whoever, in a couple of years' time, he is not going to be £4 million. That's that's the reality of it. So what we're doing in terms of going for Enzo or going for Caicedo is you're buying that coaching, that couple of years experience, or that, in Enzo's case, the 6 months experience plus World Cup. And you're saying, well, we've got that fast track now, and we think that he's far enough along that he will have a massive impact when he gets here. And we won't require that degree of coaching or the aftermarket body parts.
Yeah. And last note on this before we take a quick break. I think you're making a lot of these signings right now. right? Some of them are big money signings. Some of them are relative peanuts, right? Comparatively. Your ideal scenario, though, I think, is you're paying for past sins in the midfield. Like it's just going to be expensive to overhaul a midfield with players who are ready. However, what you need to do, and you need to walk and chew gum if you're Win Stanley and Shields and Vivell and all these guys, right? Is you need to identify who the next Enzo Fernandez is at River Plate. You need to go and identify who the next Andre Santos is, right? From Brazil. You need to go pick up.
Isn't Andre Santos the next one? Didn't we already do that?
I think there's even another one coming probably. But you need to go get those guys, and you need to do like a 3-year lag, right? There needs to be a 3-year lag where they have time to get acclimated. You can't just throw them in. It's not fair to them, right? It's a whole different level. But then when they are ready, when they are pushing for first team minutes, you're doing the same thing. 3-year lag on that player, right? That's how you build sustainable success. That's what they need to do right now.
Well, and as Nick said, we're going to take a real quick break, but we'll be right back to talk more about midfield mania and get into some mucho gusto news for Chelsea, but stay tuned. So another thing we wanted to talk about regarding the midfield as we kind of come back in here, and I know Ollie, it's really about the fact that this is all front loading the spending for the long term versus the compromise short term, which is what we saw with Chelsea over the past 2 decades. It really in the latter half of those last 10 years, where it was really plug for a solution, try to figure out if we could develop a youth talent to take the place, or potentially go buy bigger in a different position, or buy big and it not work out. This is more of the, hey, yes, it's going to cost a lot of money, but we don't want to be spending a ton of money, particularly as the calculations for net spend in terms of your total wage bill having to be a certain amount of your total earnings coming into effect. And that really the landscape of the financial world of football is going to be changing, not necessarily the amount that teams bring in, because that feels like it's always on the rise, but how teams are going to be evaluated in their books. And so I think Chelsea, particularly Todd and others on that team, are making the smart decision now to say, hey, things are about to change, and they're not going to change to make it easier to get these players. So before things get really difficult, let's use the maximum ability that our dollars can provide us in terms of maneuverability to get what we want done and be set up for 7 years, 8 years, 10 years.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's, we talk about Vision 2030 as the club have put it. This is that vision, right? We're planning long term, and we're in this Goldilocks zone at the moment, right? Between having the freedom to spend after the takeover, with that kind of added buffer of the lockdown FFP stuff, which meant you could spend more relative to your income. And we've got the Champions League money still, right? We're in the round of 16. Hopefully we get further than that, and then we have even more leeway to do things. But it's kind of now or we wait for a couple of years, right? Because that's the reality of it in terms of spending. So we have this freedom to spend right now because of the takeover, because we're debt free, because of this extra leeway through FFP. And we can still do that up until the summer with these extra long clauses. Friend of the pod, Naz, is reporting that Enzo is happy with a deal of 7.5 years with an option for 8, right? And I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe there's an option further than that. So he is very keen for that to happen. But this is the sort of long-term deals that we're looking at because we can do them right now. And I think part of the beauty of the takeover is we have intelligent people who've taken over. They're not stupid. They know what they're doing. They see these supposed loopholes or whatever, but it's a time to act, and they've got the means to do it in terms of the money and the staff and the acquisition teams, the recruitment teams who have seen this talent, and we're ready to move. And they're putting action behind their words, and I think it's quite obvious that we have a plan and we're acting on it.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a nickel for every get Boehly and Co away from my team tweet that I saw this summer, or if I saw this fall, or I saw 2 days ago, I think when you look at the January transfer window, which we all thought was going to be insanely difficult to pull off deals, and you look at the not only the deals that we pulled off, but the ones that are still in the hopper, and you look at the profile of player that you got in January, like I genuinely didn't think this was possible. Like I didn't remotely think it was possible. Add to the fact that you have inspired UEFA to change their rules because they're a super above board organization. Don't you worry about it. And you pissed off Arsenal fans in the process. Like, is there some sort of like medal that we can give them? Like, I just don't. It's an amazing thing, and all we're doing is playing by the rules that are stated right now. There was never a rule out like Arsenal just didn't do 7-year deals except for Cesc Fabregas back in the day. Like, we're just doing them because we can, and we know what amortization looks like, and we're trying to stay within the rules provided. If FFP does come back and give us a fine, Dan, I want us to Randy Moss straight cash homie that fine over to them in Egbali's jet while we sign another player. That's what I want to do. Okay, so I like do it, man. You're playing by the rules. Everyone else is mad about it because they can't do it.
Look, as we've heard on a little known program, The Wire, the game is the game, and in fact, in this scenario, Todd Boehly and others.
You've been wire heavy lately on these quotes, my guy.
Look, I'm going to a show that I know you like versus dropping White Lotus quotes because I know those are not going to resonate with you anymore. But since the game is the game, and since we are going to get these deals done and talking about Vision 2030, we do want to make a pit stop to discuss the Malo Gusto goodness that happened over the past week or so. Look, Chelsea got the deal done with Lyon for French defender. Just please, Deschamps, don't injure half of our team that you're going to be calling up in the future. That's the only bad thing with all of these French players coming to Chelsea. The deal is until June 2030, and he will spend the remainder of the season on loan at Lyon. And in his intro clip, he talked about he is a fast player, a crosser, and box to box in terms of what he will bring to the team, looking very ready to be in the Chelsea blue, Ollie, in the announcement video. Again, very professionally crafted by both him and Chelsea on their independent channels.
Yeah, I think we'll see like a massive uptick in terms of production given the takeover, and I wouldn't be surprised if that extends to the kind of TV offering and streaming offering and app offering that we get going forward. So that's maybe something to look forward to. But in terms of Malo, yeah, I mean, again, he's a first choice target. He's 19. He's already like clearly an elite talent. You're talking about a guy who used to play rugby when he was younger, so he can kind of look after himself in those one-on-ones. He is obviously raw, but his pace is absolutely electric, and that's if you think across the signings we've made this window, that is a clear theme in terms of the physicality. But yeah, his delivery, especially on the run and from the byline in the final third, is truly elite and a real weapon. And yeah, we finally got a backup for Reece James, hashtag world's best right back. Mm-hmm. And this guy has the ability to give him some really good competition or give us that versatility to move Reece inside or next to him or whatever, This is something that we've been crying out for since Reece broke through, since we've given him so much responsibility, and since he's become so much of our system is basically Reece James FC. We need someone at least to rest him, but also to give that really competent competition.
Perfect 3-year lag, right? This is a really great example of that. Obviously, we bought this player to do exactly what you just said, Ollie. But I think for me, because of the amount of games that Chelsea play in a season, you almost have to have a rotational schedule with these guys now. I mean, they've played so much football over the last 3 years with the pandemic and the World Cup and, Chelsea making it to cup finals every year, it seems like. And it's just, and they're not playing like they did back in the 70s, right? This isn't lump the ball forward, have a nice jog, go get it. Like they're in physical duels every time they touch the ball. This is a completely different physical ask of these guys. And so to me, having a guy that can come in and be Reece Jr. doesn't give your opposition the chance to rest. It doesn't give you a chance to not game plan. I mean, like on the other side too, I know the guys are looking at Maatsen right now going, uh-oh, kid's a problem. He's a real problem. And like, then you have backup there too, right? Like the fullbacks have become such a big part of the way that modern teams play football that you have to have either someone who is never hurt, always at 100%, always giving you their best, or a rotational option that doesn't drop the level so far that you have to play completely differently. Like right now, Chelsea are playing like kind of an inverted, abnormal, weirdo formation to try and like patch up some holes where Reece James would be, right? Trying to get enough contributions in from Ziyech and Trev Chalobah and Dave to make that kind of work. Dan, this is a profile player that just you plop him right in and then he does kind of the same stuff. And that's great.
Well, if you haven't heard it yet, you can go back and listen to the player profile special that Sam and I did going into what he is going to bring, how he really brings up the floor for the replacement level. So, as we've seen, really from this season, the drop off from Reece James to whomever else is deputizing in that scenario, it's a pretty steep drop. It's like you didn't build a couple of levels of steps, and you just have to jump down 3 stories. In this scenario, you're really raising the floor. And then that way, potentially, as Gusto improves and as Reece gets an opportunity to be back at full fitness, that you're really creating a competitive nature, which is what you've wanted to see for a very long time in terms of, having someone like being able to Ben Chilwell and Cucurella when Ben Chilwell is back, because I think Ben would be the rightful number 1 and Cucurella then would be challenged to compete for the spot. And then you get a good net outcome because your floor and your ceiling are not so necessarily distanced that you have to completely change the way that you play. And so I know that we've, given Graham Potter a lot of breathing room so far this season, because I think the CFC Daily put it out that effectively there's been 0 games this season where we've had a 100% fully fit opportunity for Graham Potter or Tuchel at the very early part of the season, getting a chance to choose from every player in this Chelsea side. So, yeah, I think in general, we're very happy with this signing. It makes sense from everything we know about what the club want to be doing. And the fact that we have to wait 6 months to really see him at the club, Ollie, I mean, that can feel a little unfortunate. But when you think about the fact that you do have Trev, you have Ruben, who's been able to deputize in the right wing back spot before, who's now coming back healthy. You do have Asby. Probably don't want to play him every week, but potentially you could play him every other match. We're out of multiple competitions. And so really, you only need to play Reece 7 more times this season on the run up to Chelsea winning the Champions League. I just need to stress that 7 more games, Chelsea win the Champions League versus trying to fight for 4th in 19 remaining games of the Premier League doesn't make sense. Just play him in the 7 Champions League games. So in that regard, this feels like an okay situation, even though you don't get the player right away.
Definitely. I mean, you've secured the bag for the summer, right? I mean, this is our first choice option, and it's about looking at that kind of long-term quality build. Like, we want a squad that can challenge on all fronts, no matter if we get a couple of injuries or like 12 as we did do a couple of weeks ago. We want that overall quality to be really high. But I think you touched on a really important point there as well, which is, we all love Aspi, right? What he's done for this club. And you're now giving him a chance to say goodbye and have that kind of amazing handover at the end of the season where we can all show him the love that he deserves. And then we've got a replacement coming in 11 years after he signed for us from Liga with a similar reputation down the right-hand side. And it's almost like there's a kind of a plan in place to do that handover. And, you know, if he can have a career at Chelsea, anything like assist Piliqueta, then we're on to a massive winner, right, Nick?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, Dave does deserve that. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. I know that, you know, we're all kind of prisoners of the moment, you know, especially when things aren't going that well. I think Dave needs to get his flowers before he leaves, because it's been tough, right? He's not playing at a level I think he would love. And I really genuinely hope that there's a nice moment at the end of the season where we've qualified for the Champions League, because, you know, something, really great that's happened, and that he's able to kind of ride off into the sunset. And, you know, it needs to be said, he is one of the greatest winners ever in Chelsea Football Club. This is not a chump, man. Like, I feel like people are disrespecting him all the time now because he's not playing at a great level. But I love that perspective, and I hope that's what happens. I hope we get that sort of nice moment.
Well, it will be the all tucked in tribute to Azpilicueta.
Oh, yeah.
As he
I'll
goes
tuck
off.
mine in too. Just
fans and players and coaching staff and match officials alike, everyone will be tucked in for that in particular game. But we're going to take one quick break before we look at Friday Night Football, Chelsea versus Fulham, the return of the senior men's team to action, and talking about what we might expect there. So we'll be right back after these messages. All right, again, we get the privilege or dishonor of having to return to action on Friday night English time, and terribly within like the middle part of the day in the US. So get your doctor's notes, your out of office calendar blockers in place to take advantage of getting a chance to watch this game. Nick, are you excited after all of this to welcome Chelsea back in front of your eyeballs and see hopefully a improved result against Fulham in this go?
I am. I mean, let's not forget, they're good this year. I mean, this isn't like a fake good Fulham team. Now, I think we should have beat them before. Even with how bad we played, I think we still have a chance to beat them. I think that Liverpool game and then the subsequent 12-day break or 13-day break, whatever it is, was like the ultimate tease. Like, you saw a couple of players that you really want to see. We've signed a couple of players since then, right? Like, it's been a busy 12 days, but yeah, I'm excited to see the team back out. I don't know if Mudryk will start. I don't know if Madueke will start. I don't know what the team is going to look like, who's kind of coming back to fitness, maybe one Reece James, maybe not. I would love to understand what our injury list looks like after this break. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different. But yeah, I think we're all ready to get back. I mean, I said this after the Liverpool game, Ollie. I think Chelsea have bottomed and they're on the way back up. I think other teams, Liverpool, are still on the way down. And yeah, I think the vibes are lifted a little bit after kind of the window that we've had and some of the performances that we've seen.
Definitely. Traditionally in England, when there's a really early kickoff on a Saturday, it sets the agenda for the whole weekend, right? I mean, that's doubled when it's on a Friday night. So, I think actually what we'll see in the stadium is a really nice vibe, because you're going to see debuts as in home debuts for new signings. I think Mudryk probably will start, given that he ends every training session with like 3 hours more of training and weight training and finishing, etc., etc. I think he's ready, and that will kind of build the crowd atmosphere as well. And look, we're looking for the very rare case of having to avenge a defeat against Fulham. That just doesn't happen at this football club, and we need to set it straight. Show them where they are in West London, and actually show that we are on the way back up, with the added bonus of probably moving up the league. So we go first this weekend, and that gives us, potentially a psychological advantage heading into the rest of the season, where, the rest of the league is going to be watching us, and they're going to see, have we changed at all in these 2 weeks? There were sort of fits and starts against Liverpool, with Mudryk especially, but this is now our chance to say, no, we are back on our front foot, and we are going to progress for the rest of the season. Whether a new mega midfield signing is also involved on that Friday, who knows? But what's come in so far is very impressive, and I think the vibes around the club are really positive right now.
Yeah, you've had a chance to see some of the training videos. We've seen players like Reece James who've been getting a chance to work on his fitness. I think given the run of matches, so to contextualize what the remainder of Chelsea's February looks like. So it's a total of 5 matches. It's Chelsea versus Fulham, Chelsea away to West Ham the following Saturday, and then coming into that next week, Chelsea away to Dortmund, Chelsea at home for Southampton, and then Chelsea going to Tottenham. So there's actually not a ton of travel outside of the Champions League game that Chelsea are going to have to do, which is probably nice from a strain and being able to kind of cause disruption there. I would expect for someone like Reece, if he does get time in this match, it's probably a cameo at the end to get him ready to play against West Ham and then get him ready to go full speed against Dortmund. I think that is the match that has to be circled. Every Champions League match, the 2 remaining at this point, and hopefully the next 2 after that, are the ones that Graham Potter and team will have circled as the most important remaining fixtures on the calendar, outside of maybe the Leeds match that we're going to be in London for. I do think Graham Potter and team want to make sure that we get to see something nice with the all of our friends when we're over there.
We'll have a chat. We'll have a chat with them. Obviously, we'll let them know.
Yeah, we'll send them a Telegram, WhatsApp. But we just need to know, Graham, what form of messaging system and apparatus you use. We can conform to that.
Hey, fellas, coming to town. Would love to see a show. Just please, everyone, please do your best. Yeah, look, man. I mean, March is going to get hairy pretty quick. So you got to use the rest of the time that you have here in February to step up and start playing your best football and chart a new course, right? Because we know it's not been good enough this year. We know the performances have not been good enough. There's a hell of a lot more competition now than there was before the window started, for places, for people to consider their futures. And so hopefully that adds some incentive to individual performances to get better. And I hope that Graham has used this time effectively on the training ground, right? Communicating ideas, communicating play styles, thinking about how this team is going to compete against a lot of different types of opposition coming up. That's his job, right? And so he has to do a better job as well. But I think we're all pretty psyched. If Enzo gets done, we're going to be on cloud 9 from a vibes perspective. It's going to be awesome.
It would also, Ollie, as you talked about here, going up on the table, a win against Fulham this weekend would actually put us on 32 points. So we jump into before the weekend matches into 6th position. And then you would also have an opportunity to make up ground on Tottenham later in the month too. And so you could very quickly catapult back into or maybe slingshot and hope that you stay there versus catapult, which would be a up and then down scenario in terms of how gravity works. But this would ultimately be a way for Chelsea to make up quick ground before the end of the month and reestablish themselves in the league for the remainder of the season.
100%. That it's all about momentum at this stage. We've had this kind of reset. We've got the 4th round, the FA Cup going on this weekend. It's all about hitting the ground running again, because now it's going to be non-stop until the end of the season. Like, we are not going to see another rest period, which is why, we talked about the returnees in Reece and Ben. We have to get that right. Like, we absolutely have to get that right. No more full steps, no more, starting ahead of schedule, no more overplaying, no more minutes than need to be done. They need to be there for Dortmund. If they're there for Dortmund, then fine. I'm all good with that. And you know what? We get a good result out in Dortmund, and then we look at the home leg, and it's not so bad anymore, right? This is all about finding that momentum, making sure the players are in the right condition, getting that incredible midfield signing over the line, hopefully this week. Then you're looking at a really positive end to the season.
I think that is the way to cap this one off. So hopefully we do see that positive end of the season. There's a whole lot to go this week. We have the 30th and the 31st. So we're recording this on the 29th, but there's still plenty of time for deals to get done, for faxes to be sent and hopefully received, because that's how this is still done for some absolutely ludicrous reason. But Ollie, thanks for joining us on short notice to talk about what is an exciting time at Chelsea Football Club, and we appreciate you being here.
Always, man. Chaos in Chelsea, we wouldn't have it any other way.
And Nick, glad you're back after hopefully not breaking multiple clubs over your knees. It's a very good thing in that scenario.
Yep. No, we're all good. We're back, ready to get started again, man. Friday can't come soon enough.
All right, Chelsea fans, well, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully more good news this week and more good vibes ahead of Chelsea taking on Fulham this weekend. But until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.